Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. I'm making this video because I haven't made one in about a month, and I just wanted to give you a general update on what new projects I'm thinking of for the future, what I've been up to for a while, and just sort of get your input on some of the potential projects I'm thinking of for future videos. My semester ended just this past week, and so I have a little bit of free time here. So that's why I've been extremely busy with all these other things that I've been up to as far as schoolwork and work in general. But in the meantime, there's a couple of small little projects that I wanted to, instead of doing one video on each, I just want to sort of combine them into one video. I still have my blog, and I'll put in the description section my link to the blog. I plan on doing finishing up my book review that's in several parts on Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. I have a couple more additions to that, so those of you who have been keeping up with reading that or have been patiently waiting for the next installment of that review, I apologize for the delay, but I will be getting back to writing that in the near future. I also recently stumbled across a very interesting subject. I personally am majoring in psychology, and it's another huge passion of mine, and I barely talk about it at all here on my YouTube account, because of course most of my videos here on YouTube have to do with comparative religion or Islam and things like this. And so one of my other passions besides studying theology and comparative religion is psychology. And one of my favorite psychologists is Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist. And I started delving into his views on religions. He's done many works on religion and his views on organized faith. And I then started looking into his views on Islam. And interesting enough, I discovered that there were several haters, various places around the internet. They were quoting they had a quotation from Carl Jung, apparently comparing Islam to Nazism or Nazi Germany. And I found this very fascinating, and I was actually told, this was pointed out to me from a friend of mine who had stumbled upon it on the Wikipedia article for Carl Jung. And needless to say, I found it very fascinating. I thought to myself, okay, well, worst case scenario, if Carl Jung personally felt that Islam had anything in common, or had actually equated Islam with Nazi Germany, then I said to myself, on a personal level, I would have to, of course, agree to disagree with him. I mean, he's been dead since 1961 or 63. I'm not entirely sure which year exactly, early 60s. And for me personally, that still wouldn't take anything away from my respect for his theories of psychoanalysis and depth psychology. But I still wanted to see whether that was actually true, whether he actually thought that Islam seriously was this as evil an ideology, or in his view, possibly an ideology like Nazism. And so I went on this. I did all this research, and I own, out of the 18 volumes of Jung's collected works, I own 16 of them, and amongst various other books and articles and journals by Jungian psychoanalysts. And so I had my work cut out for me, and I did all this research, and I typed up an article on my blog, which I'll put in the description section, which is a refutation to the haters that abuse and misuse this quotation from Carl Jung. What I discovered in my research is that this one quotation, which is only occurs once, and it's in the 18th volume of Carl Jung's collected works, volume 18, entitled The Symbolic Life. And yet there are numerous other places where he talks about Islam in the other works of his, and in various interviews, and I compiled all that information and put it in this article to give a much more balanced and concise portrayal, and from the evidence of Jung's own words, what his views on Islam indeed was. And you'll hopefully find that it's not at all how the haters who use this one quotation of his would have us think. So that's one new thing that's on my blog, and I'll have the link for that article directly in the description section. Another interesting thing is since I have a passion for books, I noticed that when I was walking around several bookstores that the author of Infidel, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is the woman who wrote the autobiography Infidel, where she chronicles her abusive past and talks about why she left Islam, she apostated from Islam, and she came out with a new book entitled Nomad, which is sort of a continuation. It's also an autobiography, but it's a continuation from her first autobiography. And, you know, I've read the majority of Infidel. I have not finished the whole thing, but I've read about 90% of it from just picking it up and reading a couple chapters here and there at my work and things like this. And, you know, I've also seen a lot of interviews with her and read interviews, watched YouTube videos of interviews of hers, and I've also seen documentaries, and I've seen other videos and other articles written by people who have refuted her. So, you know, I've seen her what she has talked about. I've seen what people have responded to her as well, and basically what I can gather from everything that I've read is she claims to have had a pretty stressful life. I know that's probably an understatement for what she went through, but she went through some pretty traumatizing events with her family and growing up, I believe in Somalia, and because of that, she just couldn't, because of how she was raised, how she was treated by her family, she just denounced their way of life, which of course, since her parents were Muslim, she then, by the same token, denounced Islam and left Islam. And now she's chronicled this life of hers, and in so doing, she's taken her own personal experiences, and then she's now decided to attack Islam as a religion of 1.7 billion people. And for the longest time, I wanted to comment on her. You know, I've seen a lot of other wonderful YouTube videos that have sort of put her in her place as far as doing these sort of overgeneralizing tactics and pandering to her own personal experiences, her own unique experiences, and therefore assuming that every Muslim must be like her, every Muslim goes through the same things that she's gone through, and that somehow justifies she rationalized her hatred towards Islam, or at least, the majority of Muslims. And, so really, I didn't really think I should say anything until I came across this article in the book review, but actually it was originally published in the New York Times Sunday Book Review. It's called The Gadfly by Nicholas D. Kristof. And Nicholas D. Kristof, of course, is the author. He's one of the co-authors of the book, which was on the bestseller list for some time now, called Half the Sky, Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide. And so this author is very much knowledgeable in the subject of women's oppression around the world and women's inequality, in every country around the world. And this book does a wonderful job of chronicling, basically the oppression of women. And his attitude towards Ali's books, both Infidel and now the new one, Nomad, is pretty much what my attitude was as well, which was that, sure, I mean, she says that she's gone through these personal experiences, and while they are troubling, and of course I'm not denying that anything's, I mean, I know that there are videos and articles floating around that say that her family has denied that she's making all this stuff up, and and that's neither here nor there. I mean, whether you believe that she went through this stuff or not is of course up to you as or us rather, as readers or listeners. But really, with this other author who's doing this book review on her new book comes up with is that, yeah, she's gone through these personal experiences, and she has a personal right to be upset about her culture, her family's treatment of her. But when she then turns that energy and attacks a religion of 1.7 billion people, and then makes, statements saying that, you have all these Muslims that, that she assumes that like all Muslim women around the world are going through the same thing. I mean, I'll quote the article here, and I'll post in the description section, but I want to quote a couple passages from the article. The article reads, this paragraph I'm reading right here says, she's at her best when she is telling her powerful story, and she's at her worst when she's using her experience to extirpate and denigrate faith that has more a variegated faith that has more than 1 billion adherents. Her analysis seems accurate in its descriptions of Somalis, Saudis, Yemenis, and Afghans, but not in her discussions, say, of Indonesian Muslims, who are more numerous than those other 4 nationalities put together. To those of us who have lived and traveled widely in Africa and Asia, descriptions of Islam often seem true but incomplete. Repression of women, the persecution complexes, the lack of democracy, the volatility, the anti-Semitism, the difficulties modernizing, the disproportionate role of terrorism, those are all real. But if those were the only faces of Islam, it wouldn't be one of the fastest growing religions in the world today. There's also the warm hospitality towards guests, including Christians and Jews, charity for the poor, the austerity beauty of chronic Arabic, the sense of democratic unity as rich and poor pray shoulder to shoulder in the mosque. Glib summarizes don't work any better for Islam than they do for Christianity or Judaism, end quote. So yeah, I mean, those are not my words, those are the words of the person who wrote the article. You know, and so yeah, she basically, the author basically comes to this conclusion that instead of doing these overgeneralizations of any religion or any group of people, and then pointing the fingers, you know, and all these things. And she actually ends the whole article by basically saying that the West and the East could learn from each other not to overgeneralize and not to point fingers at each other in such a negative fashion, which is, I'll read the last 3 paragraphs of the article, which reads, "During a recent trip to Sudan, I was speaking to a Muslim Arab in Khartoum. When I said I was from the United States, he looked quite shocked and said worriedly, 'Oh, it is very violent there.' I've had similar experiences in Yemen, Somalia, Pakistan, and Afghanistan with people in those countries expressing concern about my safety in violent New York. They generalize too much from American movies. It's true that public discussion in some Muslim countries have taken on a strident tone, full of over-the-top exaggerations about the West. Educated Muslims should speak out more about such rhetoric. In the same way here in the West, we should try to have a conversation about Islam and its genuine problems, while speaking out against over-the-top exaggerations about the East. This memoir, while engaging and insightful in many places, exemplifies precisely the kind of rhetoric that is overheated and overstated," end quote. So, while I'm not saying I'm putting my entire support to the article in question, I mean, we all have perhaps our own personal feelings about how to remedy the conflict between whether you call it the West and the East, or the conflict of globalization in general, or what have you, just various different groups of people with different perspectives. The theme of the article that I do agree with wholeheartedly is that it's really, you know, these are my words now, completely ridiculous for Hirsi Ali to take her own personal experience and then take that and run with it as much as she has. And, you know, and like I said, I don't know to what extent, you know, as far as her own personal education, I mean, she's obviously a very intelligent woman, as far as her going through academia. But again, you know, it just begs the question of, is her views of Islam, you know, is largely in part due to how she was raised and the experiences she's had with dealing with her family and things like this, and that's obvious in both of these autobiographies. And so yeah, I'm not trying to form a case either which way here. I just wanted to share this article with all of you because this is once again another individual who is a harsh critic of Islam, and it'd be very interesting to hear people's thoughts on what they think of her, and of course, whether we should really take seriously her comments. I mean, of course, respect where she's coming from as far as on a personal, family level, her own personal life, but as far as, do we actually consider her statements of Islam, since they're coming from such a place? Beyond that, sharing that with all of you, really, I'm also at the point now where I'd like to ask you, my viewers, if you are interested in me making videos of any sort of comparative religious nature, whether it's on various different religions, my thoughts on other religions, or an aspect of Islam or Christianity or Judaism that you perhaps have felt that I've neglected, or things like this. I would, of course, be willing to hear you all out. If you want to leave me comments in this video, or PM me suggestions, I'd love to take suggestions when it comes to the themes of comparative religion. Beyond that, the only other future ideas or projects I have cooking is I'm probably going to do a lot more videos on psychology, actually. Talk about my views of psychology, bring up certain psychological concepts and sort of discuss them in detail. and I'll probably do that in the near future, and probably continue writing articles on my blog, so please stay tuned for those as well. So yeah, basically I'm kind of at the place where I'm just sort of feeling out different areas, thinking, brainstorming, kind of thinking of what the next video is going to be, after this one, of course. But yes, so I hope everyone's doing fine, and I hope that can't wait to hear your thoughts on these multiple things I presented to you, and also your suggestions as well. So thank you everyone for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.